Yes, sir. Let's do it. 2024, we coming in. Thomas Friedman, we back. Season 4. Follow me. You're trying to build a prison. Hey, everybody, what's going on? Welcome back, man. Welcome back. Season 4 is upon us. And we're on the eve of 2024. And this is a special prelude to what season 4 is going to be about, which is getting back to the roots. Getting back to the roots, man. The roots of the issues. So I'm going to leave you guys with an episode that I've done with my father. This was a personal conversation that my father, my stepmother, and I were having one day. Happened to be on Veterans Day. And we were just talking a little bit about his military experience, but more importantly, about a circumstance that he happened upon while working as a custodian at Ridgewood High School here in Pasco County. And so we're going to hear a little bit about his story about how Ridgewood, in my words, pimped him out. So before we get into that conversation, and mind you, this conversation takes off because we were already in the midst of doing our talks, and I had the pictures laid out. I was taking pictures and stuff. So just be prepared that when we cut from here, it's going straight into the conversation, straight in the pictures and whatnot. But keep in mind, right? Because I make my comments throughout. I edited most of this. This is an edited conversation because this was an emotional thing for me, especially upon just realizing the catalyst, right? Just the domino effect, the ripple effect that a lot of instances in my younger youth has had throughout my life, and which had directed choices and circumstances and stuff. But at the end of the day, I hold all accountability onto myself. No matter what was going on around me, I had the choices to make. Now, albeit for whatever reason was going on inside of my head, I made the wrong choices and I made bad choices. But at that time, I just thought that they were the right choices. So it's understanding how we can get into this whirlwind of ego and narcissism and just hard-headedness, that can last a lifetime, and which is where I'm at now. But getting into this story, understand what my point was, which you'll hear coming in towards the tail end once we display as many of the facts as we can. Understand that, these circumstances that happen have a ripple effect, the butterfly effect that transcends throughout the whole family. So especially when this one person is the provider of most of the family. So it's understanding, the environment that this story created, and how that environment could have so much been different if people would have just done the right thing. If people would have just done the right thing, my life potentially could have been different. My stepmother, his wife's life could have been different. We could have been raised in a different home, possibly. Like, things could have been different, but they weren't. And then to come back and hear this story as an adult, to understand so much more than as a child, it's definitely a triggering thing, because you like to get into this what if, right? So a lot of us do that. A lot of us get into these what ifs, and you may hear some of that come out of me. But at the end of the day, when I sit down and I reflect in my bed, and I just go over my day's choices and actions and whatnot, I always close my eyes at night, proud of who I am, and knowing that in that pride of myself, it's the pride of of who I am today and the accomplishments that I'm making and the choices that I'm making today, knowing what me as a human being has walked through and endured. And that pride for myself in carrying that weight is accepting that weight. So in order to become truly reformed, in my opinion, and understand one's own atrocities in life, and again, the butterfly effect that we cause, it's knowing that all fault resides within self, because we're the creators. And at the end of the day, regardless if the information is there for you to choose from or not, that is not privy for ignorance, you know. And it's our responsibilities to unignorant ourselves, if that's a word. But please go in understanding that my father is 85 years old, my stepmother's 81, and the conversation moves a little bit slow, but these are articulate people and they're very sharp at their age and still get around and take care of everything, and they're lovely people. It's understanding that this is just an occurrence that I felt was important to bring acknowledgement for my father's work. My father put a lot of work into this establishment with the hopes of recognition that never came. And for me as his son, and proud of my father, you know, in his trades and his skills, and being a grown man myself and understanding that at the end of the day, my father made many mistakes in his life, but he's a man. And as a man, I can appreciate that. My father always stood by his word. You know, he was a very hard worker, and just was always straight up with you, always looked you in the eye and told you how he felt. You know, and whether you liked it or not, it didn't matter to him, and he'd fight you over it if that's what you wanted to do. But at the end of the day, my father was a man, you know, and I understand being a man and doing men's work and putting in life's work. We like to be acknowledged for our work. So there's not much that I can do for my father at this point other than to make sure that I'm okay, make sure that I never incarcerate myself again, because I know that was torture on my father, my whole family, to see me incarcerated behind bars. Know what I was going through and know that they were just absolutely helpless in the situation, but they stood by me through the whole ordeal, right or wrong, and fought for me whenever I needed them to. So, you know, now is my turn to do the same, and that is why I wanted to produce this episode, just to get it out. And who knows what happens. But at the end of the day, my father deserves recognition for the work that he did for Pasco County, for that school, and the beautification that he did, all on a custodial's wage. So please enjoy, and leave a comment, subscribe, like, share, if you choose. Until then, season 4 will return. I'm traveling out of the country here in 2 weeks. I'll be back, and then as you can see, I got the new studio, I got the new look, everything up and running, ready to go. But it'll be back to the roots. Season 4, getting back into wrongful convictions, getting back into incarcerations, getting back into hearing from inmates themselves about their stories, things of that nature, and just bringing to light a lot of the corruption that's going on within our government and our small and little communities, including my own. So again, this is Thomas Freeme. This is Freeme Podcast. This is coming from Pasco County, Florida. This is We the People. Amen. Power to the people. Please enjoy the conversation with my parents.
The front office. Receptionist desk.
You built all that.
That's the inside. That wall was there before. Man, I put a lot of work in that fucking roof.
How many hours a day was you working on this stuff?
Well, see, that's just it. I was there 8 hours as a custodian. But they had me doing that instead of the work I was supposed to be doing. You know, when I went into service, everybody goes into service as a private.
Mm-hmm.
I was there 2 weeks and they made me a corporal. You see all them file drawers? Them are file drawers. And I asked them, I said, you want me to cover them too? And they said, you can cover the file cabinets? I said, absolutely.
Oh, they were metal file cabinets and you
Yeah.
just
Laminated
over them. So you were saying that you were hired as a custodian.
But they had me doing all this because the assistant principal, I put cabinets in his house and he knew what I could do. Steve Lucart.
Steve Lucart, I remember him. And you put cabinets into his house? Where did you build those cabinets at?
Which one?
The ones that you put in his house.
In my shop.
What is this?
I built all that around there for him to plant that tree in.
You built the planter for the
Yeah.
tree.
Yeah.
What is this?
That's the downstairs where all them computer tables were sitting that I made.
Mm-hmm.
I forget what room they called it.
The media center?
Yeah.
Uh-huh. So this is a full view of how big the media center was, and then you built all the computer tables in there.
Yeah.
And that's
Is
it.
that the media center or the library? Might have been called the library.
Well, they have media center on the wall, but it's the same thing. Yeah, I got all
Now that was back in like '94, because he stopped working in '97. He worked for them for what, 3 years then? I think 3 years.
How long did it take you to build all this?
8 hours a day, I don't know how many days. But they even let me come home for 2 weeks and pay me to be home for 2 weeks while I was building that big wall that you think.
Out of our garage.
Yeah.
So he didn't work on it for 8 hours a day because he still had to do his custodial work. So he worked on it, what, probably 6 hours a day?
So they paid you for still at custodial prices, but they allowed you to stay home for 2 weeks while you worked on building that stuff.
Yes, and the superintendent of school, which was John Long,
Oh, okay.
even tried to get me into maintenance because I would have made more maintenance.
A lot more money.
Even the superintendent of the school tried to get me into maintenance. He's the one that set up the appointment with John Long. And after John Long told me to go see the guy that was the head of maintenance, I walked in, introduced myself, and started telling him what I was there for. He says, I know what you're here for, and you ain't gonna get a job here.
Who said that?
The director of maintenance.
The director of maintenance?
Yeah.
You don't remember his name?
No.
Not offhand, no.
The director of maintenance for the county?
Pasco County School Board.
For Pasco County School Board.
Pasco County Schools.
Between the year 94 and 96.
Right.
And
93 to 96.
and when
And he told you that he knew why you were here and you weren't going to get it.
Yep.
Why did he tell you that?
because they didn't want me to get into maintenance because I knew more than the guy did that was sending all this stuff out to be done. The one that was head of
The
building.
project manager.
Yes. And it was scared I'd take his job because when I needed Formica or something, I'd call them and they'd call and order the mica for me. It got to the point where they didn't do it. They told me to call them myself. So I started calling and ordering the mica myself.
So the superintendent of education, John Long, at that time, recommended that you get a job out of maintenance for the county.
Recommended that he see the director of maintenance.
Director of maintenance for Pasco County.
Right, the director of maintenance, or was he? Yeah, he was the head guy in the maintenance, the carpentry and that division.
Mm-hmm.
Everything. Plumbing, everything. He was the head of
Was
everything.
he the head of everything? Okay.
And the portables that they had down there, they built there. So they was going to start me out, supposedly help building these portables, which I had 6 of them to clean while I was doing all this work. And when it ended and I quit, the principal of the school came down with the
principal of Ridgewood?
Yeah.
Yeah, the principal, Wendell Crenn. his
Yeah.
name was.
Wendell Cran. I remember Luke Hart.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Wendell Crane came down with the plant manager of
Oh, the
Ridgewood.
plant manager, right. The plant manager is who controlled all the custodial.
He's the one that hired me
Right.
on the recommendation from Luke Hart. And
As
so,
a custodian.
yeah, so
Yeah.
somebody complained about the portables that I was supposed to clean
Not being clean
Clean.
enough.
not being cleaned.
So you were being written up for not doing your job, essentially.
Yeah, but I
He
didn't
was
get.
being criticized
Yeah,
for not doing the job that he was hired for, which was a custodian.
Right.
But he only had
him and the manager, both of them come down to a portable. And they came in the one I was
plant
cleaning.
manager.
And there was one place in there where a kid would sit chewing tobacco and spitting it on the floor. And I pointed it out to him. I said, there ain't no reason I should have to come in here and clean this shit up when a teacher in here lets him sit here and spit on the damn floor. After that, that's when I lost it. I just quit.
You quit. Why?
He was basically having a nervous breakdown.
Well, that's what I'm trying to
Between doing all the construction work that he was doing for Ridgewood and also having to do his custodial work that he was hired for.
How old was he at this time?
Well, this is 96.
I went in.
93 he started, 93, 94.
I went in.
94.
I went in at 55 because I told Rose if I get 10 years in, which would be 65, I would get a money.
Part of retirement.
Yeah,
Part of Florida.
part of Florida return.
So you went in at 55 years old as a custodian.
Right.
They found out that you owned your own business and you could build cabinets basically because you put cabinets into Steve Lucart's home and he went to the school and how did you get involved with building for the school? Where did that come from?
Steve Lucart, when I went in, like I said, Steve Lucart is the one that told the plant manager to hire me. And he was the one that came up to me and wanted something done out of it for Mike or something.
Asked him if he could do that.
Yeah.
I mean, he knew
A
that
small
he could-
job.
right.
Yeah.
He knew that he could.
Probably a nuisance to him in the office or something of that nature, and knew that he could probably just cover it up or fix it or whatever.
And then after that, just one thing after another. They even took me to another school. They had a scoreboard in the other school for basketball and wanted me to build one just like it. I built one just like it, only better,
And where'd that go?
in the gym.
In Ridgewood's gym.
Yeah.
You don't have pictures of that.
Yeah, once I mean, Steve Lucart knew that he was a cabinet builder and he could do all types of construction. So your dad was working already at Hudson High School, I think, weren't you? Wasn't it Hudson High School?
Yeah, but I quit there.
Yes, you quit there when you remodeled Julio's house. But he was trying to get into a day shift. Okay, and Ridgewood, I think at Hudson it was a night shift.
Mm-hmm.
And he really wasn't happy with the night shift. And so when Uncle Julio's house flooded, he quit Hudson so he could remodel Uncle Julio's house in that 100-year flood that we had in 93, I think.
No name storm.
The No Name Storm, right. And we have to find out when the No Name Storm was, and then we'll know the
And
dates.
to top it off, they had a football field. I don't have pictures of it though, but Steve Lucart went on vacation, and at the football field, at the entrance to the football field, he had me build an 8x10 building by myself with a window in it for somebody to go in there and sell tickets out of to get into the football.
It was March 1993 when the No Name Storm came here, when it hit here. And at that time, he was working at Hudson High. So it had to be 94 when he got the job at Ridgewood. He got a daytime custodial job, and he worked there for 94, 95, 96. He worked there for because he stopped working in February 1996. So he worked there for 3 years. He was hired as a custodian, and once Steve Lucart made
What was his pay?
Oh, I don't remember.
What was you getting paid?
He doesn't remember.
I think it was $5 an hour.
Not a lot. Custodial wage, whatever custodial wage was. And
You said $5 an hour.
he doesn't know. He doesn't remember.
I don't know for sure. But
Well, I'm sure that's a ballpark around there somewhere. I mean,
don't know.
it's either 5 or 10 or 15 or 20 or, you
No.
know. So it was, even if it was $7 an hour.
Yeah, custodial pay was not that good, but you got benefits. You know, he got his health benefits and he got vacation. And but the difference between custodial pay, doing what he did, and maintenance pay, because maintenance pay, he could have brought in all those years of.
And the other thing is, one of the reasons they might have not have hired me is because Rose's ex-husband worked at maintenance
In that department,
in that department.
and they knew that.
He was a bricklayer, a block layer. And
construction.
like I told Rose, and I was scared for her because she was working at the district. If it hadn't have been for her working at the district, I'd have owned that school.
And you worked for the school for how long?
35 years.
So this is my thing now, because this is the story, right? Because in 93, 94, I'm how old?
19.
Right, because I was supposed to graduate in 93. So that right there, see, what we're talking about is economics. We're talking about family structure, and we're talking about how this family was taken advantage of, which could have been something that could have changed our whole layout with everything that I was going through, the money issues that we had, as tight as the money was back then, struggling. My father's 55 years old, working for $6 an hour, and they know that they're taking advantage of him. And this is the domino effect that happens in Pasco County. So now me, as a returning citizen in Pasco County, none of that is ever taken into account, mostly because nobody knows. It's like I asked Dad, I said, a year or 2 years from now, the thing that bothers me is a year or 2 years after he put in that work or he was gone, people would go in and say, man, this is beautiful in here. Who did this? We don't know. Who knows? We just hired some guys to come in. So it's understanding that this is the domino effect. Took advantage of a family, of a man and his capabilities, and the result of that was years of more labor, struggle, strife for us, because potentially it could have just been one man who may have had a problem with him and had enough influence to say, well, we know he's good enough for the job, but we're not going to hire him because we're siding with somebody. Or so it's understanding how that could have potentially changed my life, how my life could have potentially went in a whole different direction if he got the job out in maintenance and he was making $45,000-$50,000 a year.
Yeah, he would have gotten.
Well, back then probably 25 or 30.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
You know? So it would have changed our family, and who knows where we would be sitting at today. So this is how it bothers me to sit here and know. And then me being a returning citizen coming back into Pasco County, none of this stuff is known. I'm just looked at as, oh, he's a lifetime career criminal here in Pasco. We don't want to work with him. We don't want to do this. But you guys were a big catalyst in why all of this was created. That's why this story has to get out and understood. How much, Father, all of that work, if they were to outsource that to a company,
oh God,
how much would that have cost? How much did you save Ridgewood High School?
probably a good $30,000-$40,000.
Now my thing is this.
Because I was getting $10,000 when I was doing banks.
My thing is this. How do we know that money didn't go into somebody's pocket? How do we know that they kept him on as a custodian? Meanwhile, they were getting funds so there's funds there. How do we know that people didn't gather around and say, let's go in here and dip in here and get these funds for this construction?
Well, all the funds that a school has, okay, is very monitored and very controlled.
Well, the thing of it is,
And
I don't know what maintenance would have charged another school to build something.
What I'm saying is,
I'm not sure.
What I'm saying is, I've seen it. I've been in these rooms. I know how this operates. And I'm not saying that this is what happened. I'm just saying, how do we know it didn't happen? What we do know,
He
right?
got taken advantage
He got
of.
taken advantage of.
Right.
Okay.
Big time.
This is what we do know.
I believe, Shane, that if he did not do that work, eventually maintenance would have done it. Because maintenance goes around to the different schools and does, if they need a wall, if they need something fixed or built or whatever, maintenance, that's what maintenance was there for, to maintain and upgrade.
And there's funding for that, right? There's budgets for that. There's funding for that. Each year, each one of those departments get a certain amount of funding and budgets to do exactly that. There's funding there and there's budgets there. Now, it's just either one or two things, right? Either the money that could have or should have went into what he did was appropriated somewhere else.
That's probably it.
Or it was under the rugs, somebody pocketed it,
couple people pocketed it because it would have had been a couple people involved in that process. So a couple people saw the opportunity to get free money and pocketed it, and then they fired him or made it so unbearable that he would quit shortly after that.
Yeah, I don't think that the money went in anybody's pockets.
Well, that's
I
because
just
you're
think
a
that
good
they-
person, and I'm not saying.
It saved them a hell of a lot of
They
Well, if you're
found-
saving money, it's going in somebody's pocket.
They
That's the
found
point.
the opportunity to utilize his skills for the enrichment of Ridgewood, for the beautification
See,
of Ridgewood.
what happened is
But and that's the beauty of how you see things. But I'm in this world. These people do not care about the beautification of a school. They don't, because there's plenty of money out there for that. So it's, why are all these schools run down if their care is about the beautification? That's a whole, any kind of construction to the school is a whole separate project and a whole separate
That
budget.
has to go through
The county,
maintenance.
which is the county. So this is what I'm saying. This is my point. Dad just wasn't building this stuff in the garage because they designated a whole area for him to build this stuff. All of that had to be permissed by the county, by maintenance.
He was getting his, it was approved by the principal of Ridgewood, and the material was coming from maintenance, whoever maintenance.
They still have to get approved. There was code there. They still have to get approved. That principal has to go to the maintenance of county, but I do understand building and code. And if he was doing that type of project, especially around people during the day, there had to be safety involved and there has to be code, which means that it has to be approved through the county, through maintenance, for that project to go on.
Probably.
So the county knew what was going on, maintenance knew what was going on. Your ex-husband worked in maintenance.
Right.
Okay, I'm just connecting dots. I'm just listing facts is all I'm doing. It's all I'm doing. I'm not making no insinuations, no accusations. I'm just listing facts. Your ex-husband worked in maintenance. Steve Luckhart had work done in his home, loved the work, recommended Dad to do some work there in the office. One thing turned into another. We see the pictures of what the end result was, which was, as what you said, $35,000-$40,000 worth of work. And that's just the work.
See, that's hard to say, because if I'd have done it individually, then I would have.
Well, let's put it this way. If you had your shop and Ridgewood came to you and said, this is what we want you to do for our school, how much would you have charged Ridgewood for that job?
Well, to do that, see, I'd had to try to figure out how much material I needed to start with. And I have no idea at that time how much a sheet of mica was. So it's really hard to tell. But the thing of it was, when Steve Luckhart had me do that one thing, then what happened is each teacher in that school would go to him and say, I'd like to have this done in my office or in my room. And that's how the ball got started rolling.
See, Tom, your dad loved doing the building and formica work, okay? However, he didn't object to that. He loved being creative, okay? And he loved the outcome of what it looked like when he was done. However, he was a custodian. That's what he was being paid for. In addition to doing all this formica work and building there during that 7.5 hour period that he was working daily, he also had to do his custodial work. Okay, so they hired
At 55.
Huh?
At 55.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and at any age, right? We have custodians that were 65.
Well, yeah, but you didn't have custodians that were 65 that you were working 2 jobs.
No.
No.
Right.
So,
That's the point.
So they hired a custodian. Say they hire a custodian who has all these particular, things they have to do within the day, right? Okay, so he was expected to do all these particular things in a very good manner and also build all this stuff. But he agreed to it. He agreed to it. But the pressure got so bad on him because of doing all this extra stuff.
Why did you agree to it, Dad? When they came to you and they started asking you to do all of these things, did it ever occur to you at any time that what was going on was unfair?
No, that didn't come to me until they got on me about the portables not being clean.
And how did you feel in that moment? Did you feel like all that work that you did was for nothing?
Basically.
I felt
And
he,
somebody
I think he felt
told,
used.
and somebody down there told me when I was in there getting all my tools and stuff out there that I had in there, and I forget who said that. They said that's all right. They just hired another person that can do all that
Meaning what? What did that mean?
for Michael work and all that.
So they were going to hire another custodian that they were going to use
Yeah,
like
take
they
advantage
used to.
of, yeah.
I don't know. I never heard that. But anyway, he was happy. He was happy to do it, and felt rewarded because of the people saying, "Oh my God, that looks so beautiful! Wow, you did such a great job." But then when his real job work, custodial, was being criticized because he certainly couldn't do his custodial work to the status that they wanted it done or that they expected it to be done in that time frame and do both. I mean, he really, I came home one day and his head was just down. He stopped working. He wasn't going back anymore because he was
Well, I can remember them times. And again, Dad battled alcoholism. We
I
already
don't know if he battled alcohol. Shane, your father was a binge drinker.
right.
Okay.
Triggered by what?
Triggered by once he started to have a drink, he didn't want to stop.
But what triggered him to drink? Because Dad is well aware of himself. So what? Well, let's ask him. He's sitting right here.
I have no
What-
idea.
From the time I was raised, Shane,
Let's-
going in and out of bars.
Hold on. Let me ask like this here. Did at any point that you were working there, and I want you to think back, because again, these are reflections on my life, because back then through then, a tumultuous time, right? So it's understanding that how did that pressure at work that was going on with everything there, how did you respond to that? How were you coming home? Did that cause you?
And when every once in a while he would go to the
VFW right up here the road. I mean, there's plenty of
that
times.
was in the 2000s. This was
That's all I'm trying to just figure out the timeline.
when he was working for Ridgewood.
What I'm trying to disclose now is how that affected you. Like you said, he got to a point to where he's hanging his head down low, and I can remember him being at the table talking about how tired he was and all of these things. So it's what I'm trying to for the record is to get to understand how that affected you and your family life.
He was exhausted, and
It affected me a lot because they wouldn't promote me up to maintenance, for one thing. And
it affected him because
Did you guys have arguments about these things?
no, it affected him because he really thought that he deserved a job at maintenance, and
after
he
that,
wasn't getting it. They
when
simply
I came
said
home,
no.
when I left, basically quit. and came home and was so disorganized and everything. I went to see a psychiatrist.
What made you quit? Like, what was the thought pattern, your process? I understand the portables and all that.
Then put me in between. It's just like the manager come down one time, and the plant manager, one hurt, wanted me to do something. And I said, well, right now I'm doing this for the superintendent.
For the principal.
For the principal. So it was putting me in between.
They were pulling you everywhere.
Yeah. It was putting me in between the plant manager and the principal.
Right.
What did the plant manager want you to do?
I forget what it was.
Something for the school or outside of the school?
No, something for the school.
And the plant manager was his boss.
I done something at his house. I forget what it was. But you know, when I started doing all this shit, everybody was happy as hell.
But no, that didn't cause him to drink or anything.
I'm just asking.
No.
I'm asking.
No.
I'm asking
And
the
then
effects because there was obviously effects to that. So again, it's like he said, the psychological. He is a man, and not only that, but he is a man who has been used to providing his whole life, right? So now he's at his age to where he's breaking down. He feels, and correct me if I'm wrong, he feels like he's less than what he used to be. He can't provide like he used to. He can't do the things, and that's what he was built on. My father's always had pride in the fact that he don't have to ask nobody for anything.
Right.
Yeah.
So how did that bother you, knowing that you're working for $6-7 an hour at this age?
As a custodian.
As a custodian, never mind the work, but the fact that you are just trying to have some semblance to help Rose with her minuscule salary as a secretary for the school.
I thought about it, but I don't know what would have happened if I said I'm not going to do it.
Not going to do what?
Any of that work they want me to do.
And that's what I'm trying to find out. So was there any, did you feel pressured at all that you may have lost your job or that you would have lost maybe favor with them if you didn't do this?
I would say yes. I would say yes, because once he started,
Everything I'd done, that,
once he started, they knew what he was capable of.
And this is because my father is not a dumb man.
No.
By a long shot. He was a business owner. He owned his own cabinet shop, and he was one of the best here in Pasco County for the longest, him and Madewell. So he's not a dumb man. So I know for a fact that my father is not going through this just because he loves doing it, right? There's more to it than that. He loves doing the work, yes, but he knows in his mind as he's doing this work that he's doing a lot more than what he's being paid for.
Oh, absolutely.
And he's continuing to do it because he's scared that he's going to lose favor.
He was continuing to do it in hopes that he would get a good recommendation and then go to maintenance and be compensated for the talent that
He was putting
had.
he was putting his good faith in the shoe. He was laying his cards out on the table, and
Right.
and yeah, he got swept up on.
where I worked out of, wasn't a building. It was a room right next to me with industrial arts. Now I got the industrial arts teacher coming over and asking me how to do this and how to do that. So I found out he was leaving. So I went up to the principal and asked him if there was any way I could get his job. And there was 2 or 3 of them in there when I was asking. And it came around that after he left, they stopped hands-on. They went to all computers.
Right.
So You can't learn on a computer how to use your hands to build something.
But he was very, if he got into maintenance, which is where he really belonged, okay? But he took the job as custodial because that was the only job he could get at that particular time.
And that's another thing that pissed him off when I went over to get the job, is they're looking at all the friggin' work I took away from that place.
From what place?
Maintenance.
Mm.
Nobody in there was doing what I was doing, so that was taking a lot of work from them.
I don't know if they cared because they stood around most of the
Yeah,
time.
they don't care. They were happy that you took the work. My thing is that
Absolutely.
they were, and again, it's not an accusation, right? But it definitely needs to be looked at. Was money given for that project? Because either way. But one final question: were you ever approached or made to feel in it? Because I had already went through that school, was a mess up in the school, right? And then quit. You were still there. Were you ever approached? Did anybody ever say anything to you about me or make you feel any kind of way, or
No,
that's that guy's father or anything like that?
No,
Your name never come up.
absolutely not.
And what I do through the daytime, before I was supposed to go do the portables, was work in the cafeteria, cleaning tables and everything
Right.
after lunch,
Which custodial people did?
which was one of my jobs.
Right. I mean, he's hired for 7.5 hours. In that 7.5 hours, he had a multitude of different expectations that his job entailed. The cafeteria, help was one of them. Cleaning the portables was another, and other stuff. So he was doing all his custodial work, also on top of all this other stuff that he was doing, and he wasn't up to par with what.
Nobody was covering for him. Nobody backed him. When they come and talk about a mess that was somewhere, nobody said, "Oh, well, I'll go get that for him," or anything of that nature.
No, I don't believe so.
It was a mess.